I'm curious, how many of you have really enjoyed diving into Nehemiah, the book? I'm curious. Why? Why, Kerry? Did you put up your hand? Why? Let me come to you because otherwise people will hear. Why are you enjoying the book?
I like Nehemiah because it's so unlikely. You know, the things that you were saying about this sommelier being called, it reminds me that people that never think their name would be called get pulled to the front. And I love, Dana last week talked about this, but I've really loved the picture of everyone doing their part. I feel like I can resonate with the sword in one hand and the trowel in the other. In my experience of being a follower of Jesus, is it's been this combination of building and battle and building and battle. And just when you think you've got the brick up, there's someone coming to stab you. And, just seeing God as deliverer, like the same God then is the same God now. So I've really loved it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Who else?
I've enjoyed we in our table community we've been discussing kind of the whole almost like the whole story of the Bible because it's quickly like wait, where did the Israelites come from and who's attacking them and why are there people that don't want the wall to be built and like all these interesting things and there's so much context to it. So I feel like it's a very like pivotal book of like it's kind of in the center of it all. And so it's been really cool to like see the whole story and narrative of Jerusalem and I don't know what God is doing with it and has done. So it's been really cool.
So, what's compelling, many things about this book, but first and foremost is that God takes a sommelier. I like playing with that word because it's not inappropriate, but it just tweaks our mind a little bit. To be a cupbearer to the king is kind of culturally nonsensical. It doesn't make sense to us because we don't have kings in America and we certainly don't have cupbearers to the king. And so it doesn't make sense to us. But if for a moment I think of a sommelier, I think of someone who is an expert with wines, which he needed to be. He was probably a eunuch because oftentimes the kings required that of that role and position. He was a confidant. He was oftentimes the center of the spy ring. He accumulated knowledge, bits and pieces for the king, and he couldn't get any higher as a Jew. That was the pinnacle that he could achieve or attain with benefits in the Medo-Persian Empire. But what makes this story compelling secondary is that God sets him on a sacred assignment. Now, the sacred assignment is not to become a pastor. It's not to lead a church or plant a church, and those are all beautiful things. It's not to be a Levite or a priest or a bishop. God plays him completely out of position. I was speaking at an event on Friday and was struck again, touching in on this, how ridiculous it is that God would choose us out of position. I mean, could you imagine anyone whose hands are more prepared for elegance, whose fingernails are probably cleaned and trimmed weekly, because as he presents the cup to the king, I would imagine the Medo-Persian Empire would require an extremely high culinary protocol. You couldn't just have anyone dump a glass of wine in front of the king. Yes, it is true he tasted it to make sure it wasn't poisoned. But aren't you compelled by how God takes this guy who is completely out of position or being asked to play out of that? And it's not even within the Medo-Persian Empire. It's not within Israel or the temple. That was Ezra. Ezra taught the law. But God says, I know what I want to do with you. I want to make you a city builder, and I want you to make you the kind of the captain of the guard. You're going to head up the army. And I'm sure Nehemiah must have tossed and turned. The more it dawned on him, God is playing him out of position. Sometimes, dear friends, can I father a moment here? We are so preoccupied with finding my lane to run in it, we may actually miss the fact that God wants you to run in a completely different lane. And it throws us. Well, I went to Biola for 4 years. Well, some took 5 for 4. And I didn't even get a ring by spring. I mean, I went and I did all those things, and now surely God's going to use me in that lane. No, he might not. He may say, you are perfectly suited with your nimble hands, with nails that are carved and clean, to go and work with rubble. There is such sublime complexity in this book. And this chapter 4, is particularly so. So I said to Meryl, I'm going to try something tonight. Would you bear with me? I'm a kind of threads and themes guy. You know that when I read a passage, I see the themes and threads that jump at me. But this time, I want to go through it verse by verse. But I have to go quickly because it's quite a chunky one, as you well know. So I'm going to read a few verses. I'm going to make some comments. And if you want to make a comment, let me know and I'll give you the mic. Because I kind of dig the whole idea of, let me just try and get my computer open. There we go. And so it's an incredible story about a man who God uses to play out of position. And forgive me for beating the drum, but I do want us to understand that. And it's not a calling to a pastoral or church-directed assignment. It's very much how to shape the city of God, and Dana did such an incredible job with that last week. If you didn't get it, I think it's worth a listen. So let's dive into it. We'll see how we go. If it sucks, then I won't try it again next time. Nehemiah chapter 4. The historical context is that Nehemiah is a Jew. They're in exile. Babylon has been defeated, the Babylonians, by the Persians. We all know that's real time. That happened historically. And now the Medo-Persian Empire is in its capital of Susa, and the whole thing plays its way out as Nehemiah the Jew is in the presence of the king. He's got an incredibly downcast disposition. The king asks him why, and he says, dude, my city is in ruins. My people are defeated. And the king sends him to go and achieve that. Let's pick up in chapter 4 and verse 1. It will be on the screen behind me. When Sanballat is the Persian, the name rings, the clever people tell us, sin has given life. I researched that and the number of authors, and they all land with their sin has given life. So this isn't a good dude. So when Sanballat heard we were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and very incensed. He ridiculed the Jews. And in the presence of his associates and the army of Samaria, he said, what are these feeble Jews doing? Will they restore the wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day? Can they bring the stones back to life from these heaps of rubble, burnt as they are? Tobiah the Ammonite was at his side, and he said, what are they building? Even a fox can climb on it and break down their wall of stones. Now, ladies and gentlemen, any sacred assignment that you and I have been given by God, we have to embrace and accept. It's not a joy ticket to happiness. It is an assignment, a marching order to war. I know that's hard for us to come to terms with, partly because we have a generation who have not grown up with war. When you used to seeing your uncle go to war, your brother go to war, that you will go to war, it's expected. This is a very different conversation into that culture. But for you, and not so much for me, because I spent time in the military, that may be a little foreign for you. Sanballat means sin has given life. Now, I wished I was clever to be able to pull a little video clip for you, because when I read this, I read the quintessential bully. Look at it there. It says, he became angry and was greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews. Why? In the presence of his associates and the army of Samaria. I mean, pause for a moment and use your creative imagination and think of that high school bully who walks down the school, whatever you call it, passageway or whatever, and behind him are the other football dummies. I mean, all the thick-set guys, and he looks at them like, I got this. Watch, I got this. And he turns to a gentle-handed sommelier. He's got an army behind him. He's got his associates behind him. And he looks at all of them and says, you've got to be kidding me. He intimidates them. And I want us to take note that whenever the enemy comes against us, he will use whichever means to intimidate us, rallying around us his homies, the voices, the whispers, the uncertainties that gets brought to us. Now, what's further interesting in this is that he says, can they bring the stones back to life from these heaps of rubble? Dana spoke so eloquently about this last Sunday. Is it possible? Look at this slide. And again, it's kind of a bit average, but have a look at it. So on the left, the big picture is what the archaeologists tell us is what's the only part remaining of the Nehemiah wall. The top right hand gives you some idea of the city and its destruction and the burnt walls. And the bottom right picture gives you some idea of the depth of the wall that they had to build. I mean, this was not a lightweight affair. Ordinary people just like you and me, jewelers, merchants, perfumers, nobles, farmers, were rallied together by Nehemiah to say, we've got a great project to do. We've got to build the wall of the city of God. All of them inappropriately assigned to a greater project. You know how privileged we are in building the church? Do you know how privileged we are that what you and I give our lives to every time we have someone around our table, every time we pray for someone, that is an eternal act? Isn't that absolutely amazing? Someone went home after last Sunday night. Now, I'm being very selective in how I say it because I don't want to breach confidence, and wept as she shared with people what God did to her last Sunday. Who is Dana? Dana is a mother of 3. That's all. But what God does in moments of sacred assignment is He uses us beyond ourselves. Look at that wall. Do you know that they rebuilt the city of Jerusalem in 52 days? And this passage gives you the intensity of the opposition towards that end. Now, Tobiah is an interesting guy because here it says he's an Ammonite, but actually his name in the Hebrew means Yahweh is good. So he's either married into the Jewish tribe, or somehow he's been given a Jewish name, but he's the nerdy guy next to the bully who looks at him and says, sorry, my imagination. He kind of puts his arm on the shoulder of the big bully and he says, even foxes will what? Even a fox climbing up will break the wall. Look how wide, the picture's gone. Look how wide the wall was that they built. But there's this nerdy guy saying, you've got to be kidding me. Even if a fox tiptoes across there, it's going to be, because not only is there intimidation, but there is a demeaning sense to what the enemy will do. It will make no difference, is what he says to you and to me. It's not worth the effort. It's too costly. There's opposition on the outside, and oftentimes there's opposition on the inside. Tobiah was on the inside. He was family. He was tribe. And so the enemy's tactic is not just to come against our great project from the outside, Sanballat with the whole army of Samaria in the valley, but Tobiah, married into or one of the Jews who whispers. And folks, every great assignment we put our hands up to, and again, this was not to church plant, start a Bible college, all of those things are beautiful. I've given my life to that. This was something else, but it was part of God's great plan. And when you and I say yes to this assignment, there will be opposition on the outside that will intimidate you, and there will be opposition on the inside that will demean you. Let's carry on reading. Verse 4. Hear us, O God. What does Nehemiah do? He doesn't go to TikTok, Instagram, or any other social media platform and say, look, or YouTube. I must just explain my side of the story. Can I just tell you all actually what's happening? He doesn't do that. He doesn't for a moment defend himself. He doesn't for a moment need the obligation to explain what really. Now, please listen. Because when opposition comes from the kid on the other side of the classroom or in my dorm, what is it I want to do? Well, come on, we need to talk this out. Nehemiah doesn't do that. He doesn't say, let's talk it out. He doesn't say, well, look, come, let's debate this. He just goes to God in prayer. Please hear this. Every one of us, I have. In the previous church we led, we were sued by a group of families. We won the lawsuit because it was a frivolous lawsuit, dismissed eventually by the judge. But I had to sit in the courts of Los Angeles listening to people in my church lie about me. The businessmen in the church say, give us the lawsuit, we will counter-sue them. We'll sue them 10 million and it will shut them up. And I said, no, the Bible says you can't sue your brother. Jesus, like a lamb led to the slaughter, the greatest test you and I will experience in our homes, our lives, our leadership, is the inappropriate opposition that will come. And what does Nehemiah do? He prays. Now, don't you love this raw, gutsy prayer? Hear us, O God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back. He doesn't say, oh God, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I mean, this isn't a great Jesus moment. This is a very earthy moment who's being burnt by the Middle Eastern sun, whose hands are getting butchered as he cleans up rocks to build with them. And he says, God, turn their insults back on their own heads. Give them over as plunder in the land of captivity. Don't cover up their guilt or blot out their sins from your sight, for they have thrown insults in the face of the builders. Oh, dear friends, the greatest lesson that you and I have to face when we are on the great assignment, say nothing. Nothing. Let God be our attorney and defend us. His prayer is raw. His prayer is gutsy. His prayer is honest. His prayer is real. It's not even a good prayer. You don't want to imitate that. When someone down the hall at college turns against you and wins your friends over and lies about you. You don't want to pray that prayer. I'm sure we're tempted to. But then verse 6 says, so we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height, for the people worked with all their hearts. You know, Meryl's a marriage and family therapist, and one of the things she says to couples, she says, would you like to live on the other side of you? Is that right? Would you like to live on the other side of you? How do you say it?
What's it like living on the other side?
What is it like living on the other side of you? So here's my question to you with that in mind. Would you like to be part of a church full of people like you? Normally the most critical people represent a church that they don't want to be part of. Do you want a church to be full of people just like you? Yes, says Nehemiah, because they worked with all their hearts. Now again, this was 52 days. That's as long, and they hardly slept, as we will see, and in the weeks which lie ahead. But they worked with all of their hearts. Ladies and gentlemen, this Jesus assignment is so compelling, whatever yours looks like. It is so compelling, and the greatest conviction is not the fragility of giving ourselves half-hearted to it. It's the absolute privilege of saying, I want to give myself fully to this. I want to do it with all of my hearts. And when Sanballat, verse 7, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the people of Ashdod, now this thing's growing, heard about the repairs to Jerusalem's walls, had gone ahead, and the gaps were being filled, they were very angry. And they did two things. They plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem, and they stirred up trouble against it. What is God trying to teach us here? I think God is positioning us with a heartfelt reality that opposition will come. And sometimes this opposition will come when people plot together. Isn't that horrific? I remember one of my daughters had a girl in her class when they were at elementary school. And this little girl took it upon herself that every friend this daughter of mine made, that within a day, this little girl would run to this new friend and invite her around on Friday night for movies and come and have a sleepover at my house. And her mother loved this. And so there was this whole interplay. And needless to say, I had a broken-hearted daughter because there was a plotting together. The pain and the trauma of my enemies becoming friends can sometimes be too hard to bear. And they stirred up trouble. They agitated. This is such a difficult passage and yet such a beautiful ending. Because the whole time there's this other side. And you know, whatever it is God's called you to, you know that there are these voices that seek to intimidate, that seek to discourage, that seek to divide, that seek to demean you. Or says your dad, well, why do you want to do that? Well, why do you want to give yourself to that silly little project? In your heart you say, oh, I get it. I get it. Tobiah demeaning the sacred call on my life. What does Nehemiah do this time? Well, this time, verse 9 says, but we prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet his threat. There we go. So now he adds to prayer a very practical posting. Now, what do I want to say about this? Two things quickly. Number one, do you know and is one of the most beautiful theological words? What do you mean, Chris? As a young person, Carl Cronier was my kind of mentor. He was my pastor, and I was 18, 19 years old, and I was keen and hungry. And he said to me, Chris, every theological truth has an equal and corresponding theological truth. Always look for the and. God is sovereign, and man has a free will. Always look for the and. What goes wrong is when we stop looking for the and we tuck ourselves away in the one expression of truth. It's a magnificent understanding. And here we see Nehemiah's response is to pray again. And then he does this beautiful thing secondly. He posts people. Here's my ask for a moment of us here at Genesis. You know that this has been a surprise move to us. It's a little bougie. We didn't really expect to move into a space like this. It's a new adventure with lots of opportunities. God is speaking seemingly for men and women to come to faith, more signs and wonders amongst us, none of which we can do much about. But here's my appeal from this passage. Where is God posting you? I had so much fun mulling over this as I thought of many of you. And I thought, I wonder if you know where God's posting you in this chapter in our story. Who's been given the assignment, extra assignment to pray? Who's been given the extra assignment to get involved in the city? Because that's part of the responsibility of this chapter. Who's been given the extra assignment to get their hands dirty amongst the perfumers, the merchants, the governors, the nobles? What is your posting during this time? It's a beautiful one. I was just thinking of Nick and Kerry. What a gift they have been in the short time that they've been here. And we know that Nick's posting, using this analogy, is to stir up the prophetic ecosystem in our community. That more and more we hear the presence of God and we know what He is saying to us individually and together. And Kerry did such a beautiful job with the worship. It's the times I least like leading because I feel like, do I stop it? Do we continue? We don't have a very tightly predetermined liturgy. Very open, very vulnerable to what we think God is saying. What is you students who are here 9 months and you go home? What is your posting? Why are you absolutely necessary and needed for the time you are here? It's an important question to ask and to answer. All right, moving on quickly, verse 9. Meanwhile, how's this going? You okay? You okay with this? Just trying this out a little bit? Okay. Not my happy space. But I think sometimes Scripture demands us to just do it line by line. Meanwhile, the people of Judah, so now you've got Sanballat and the army of Samaria. You've got Tobiah, his little nerdy sidekick, who's like, oh, even the foxes will kick the wall over. Now we see it being added to. The people of Judah said the strength of the laborers is giving out, and there's so much rubble, we cannot build the wall. Our enemy said, before they know it or see us, we will be right there among them, and will kill them and put an end to the work. And then thirdly, the Jews who lived near came and told us, whenever you turn, they will attack. Now these are three not so encouraging verses. You'd agree with me? Okay. Now let's stop here for a moment. 1, I'm astounded by the persistence of the Jews. It says there, let me get it. It says it 10 times. Why can't I see it in my notes? Is it up there? Anyway, there is this overwhelming nudging. We used to call it I don't know why we got it, so forgive me, it's not intended to be racist, but Chinese torture. You know when you used to wrestle as brothers in the backyard, and the bigger brother would get on top of the other one and kind of drip water on them, or use your knuckles to kind of beat the chest a little bit? There's that picture. You're going to get taken down. You are going to get beaten up. But can I say, secondly, I'm so nervous with so much talk about mental health that we don't know how to be gutsy anymore. Listen to this verse. The strength of the laborers are giving out, and there's so much rubble we cannot rebuild the wall. You know, often I'm told, be careful. Don't push people too hard. The only problem is I'm an historian. And so I love reading history and understanding history. I'm also a military man, or I was. And so I understand, and I wish I could translate some of it for you into American vernacular, because I was in the South African Defense Force. But wherever you think you can go no more, the army pushes you that you can go another 10 or 20%. I remember the first time we ran to the shooting range. It was about a 10K run, full backpack with our weapons. And one of the guys with me, we were all school teachers being trained to become officers. And one of the guys was very overweight, and he was taking strain. And so I ran across to him in my platoon. I grabbed his weapon. I said, I'll take it. So I'm running with 2 weapons, thinking I'm doing such a nice thing. The drill sergeant comes past, and he calls him over. And he says, where is your rifle? So I said, well, I'm carrying it. And he turns not to me, but to him, and says, you are never without your rifle. And he walks to the side of the road and gets this huge boulder. Now, we are in kind of desert training in Africa. And he gives him this huge boulder. And he said, today you will learn a lesson you will never forget. You are running back to camp with this big rock. Now, I'm feeling absolutely dreadful, thinking my kind gesture is becoming eternal damnation for this buddy of mine. I didn't think he'd make it. And do you know, he plodded his way back to base. After we'd all landed, he arrived there with his big rock, because we are all capable of achieving more than we think we can. And do I understand mental health a little bit? I'm married to an expert. But what I also understand is how easily we can give up under the guise of I am burnt out. Do you know what burnout is? The extent to which the human body has to be pushed to scientifically, psychologically burn out. They had a wall to build. They had an army around them. They had people being threatened coming in amongst them and killing them. They couldn't sleep. They worked during the day in the blistering sun of 40 plus degrees, trowel in hand. Half of them were standing guard with swords, and then they switched places. And in fact, and I'm running ahead of myself here, Nehemiah did not, it was like this, he did not even change his clothes for 52 days, and they built the wall of Jerusalem. Why are you being so strong, Chris? Because we give up too easily. Surely, in the very fabric of our faith, there is fortitude. There is stamina. There is steadfastness. I raved about Tyler and Haley, called them up the other Sunday. For 8 years, every week, they've had a group of people come to their table and have a meal together. Not, oh, geez, we burnt out. We can't do this anymore. People are horrible. We have that. No, for 8 years, they've had people around their table eating together, changing lives, loving, caring, serving. Now, is there place for rest? Yes. Is there place for a Sabbath? Of course there is. But ladies and gentlemen, do you see how subtle the enemy comes in and he says the strength? Who is it by? This. The people of Judah said the strength of the laborers is giving out. There's so much rubble, we cannot rebuild the wall. Not true. They did. In 52 days. Taking the rubble, burnt stones, cleaning them. They weren't ready-laid, ready-made. They had to clean them, remove them, reposition them, rebuild them. In 52 days, who were they? Merchants, jewelers, noblemen, farmers. It's a magnificent story. And I'm trying to make a point, not to offend, but please know the enemy is going to want you to give up way too early. Do you mind if I tell your story? College. Okay, so Meryl goes back to school at 52 to become a marriage and family therapist. And, it's a big deal. She hadn't studied for 30 years, 30-some years. The only thing she knew about a computer was to get her email on occasion. Otherwise, we hear, Chris! And then I've got to run through, and then I'm only marginally more knowledgeable than she, or Tion, and then someone's got to find it. It's disappeared. I don't know where it's disappeared. It's okay, Mom, it's just here. Now, I'm not saying this to belittle her. I'm saying this to say God pushes her through the door at the university, locks the door behind her, hasn't studied for 30 years. She's going to do her master's. And about midway through, she told me this afterwards. She goes through to her academic advisor and she says, I want to quit. This is too hard on Chris. It's too hard on my boy, and I don't want to misrepresent you. What else did you say? It's too hard on the family. It's too much rubble. It's too much. I have to study till 11 o'clock at night. I'm 52 years old. I would have to go and fetch Meryl, pull her out of the study. Babe, you can't sleep. And then the worst I dared mention was bees get degrees. That was the most offensive thing. She would glare at me like, how dare you, you son of Satan. How dare you? And so her academic advisor said, does Chris know? And she said, no, I haven't told him. And she said, well, Meryl, and she turned her computer around. She wants to give up. It's too much for the family. Straight A's. And the academic advisor says to her, you won't. Every sacred assignment, we get to that place where we can't continue. See, that's the key moment. That's the grace moment. Because God has called us to live a life beyond our natural means. Where I can't do it physically, mentally, emotionally, circumstantially, relationally. There's too much rubble, Chris. Yes, that's when grace appears. I don't need grace when I've got this, when I've got my exams and my assignments. I don't need it when my marriage is going well and I'm paying all the bills. I don't need it then. I need it when I kan nie meer nie korporaal, is what we used to say in the army in Afrikaans. I can't do it anymore, Sergeant. That's when grace kicks in, ladies and gentlemen. And we look back and say, but God. The very nature of the kingdom is us dying daily. All right, let me hurry up so we can get to communion. Therefore, verse 13, I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall at the exposed places, posting them by families. I love this. Everyone. Father, mother, son, daughter, married, single, old, young, kids. Leander, come. Go and see that stone over there? Go and get it, my boy, because that'll fit really nicely in here. It wasn't like the brickwork of the last 200 years of building. They were stones that were put together, pasted together by architectural genius. Come on, my 5-year-old, 6-year-old, whatever it is, grandson, come. I need that piece over there. Delts, would you mind getting some water? I say to my 4-year-old granddaughter, Papa's really thirsty. I need you. It's a family affair. It's what we all do together. And after I looked these over, I stood up and said to the nobles, officials, and the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome. Fight for your families, your sons and your daughters and your wives and your husbands. One of the conversations in our home over the last while has been the imposter syndrome. Forgive me for telling stories, at least family ones. I apologize in a way. Tion, my 26-year-old son's in Washington, D.C. right now. They're running an event for his company. And he said, Dad, you know, often I feel the imposter. It shouldn't be me. I shouldn't be sitting with billionaires and millionaires. It shouldn't be me. Someone else should know and talk about Bitcoin. I don't know squat diddly about Bitcoin. I just nod knowingly and ask some questions, and people are so impressed. But I suffer from the imposter syndrome. And whenever we say yes to a sacred assignment, we suffer the imposter syndrome. I shouldn't be doing this. Nehemiah says, don't be afraid, man. Don't be afraid. Can you imagine the inner conversation of these Jews who were standing there, 50,000 or whatever? All very well for you to say, buddy. We've been living here. We've been living in the ruins. We've been living with fabric draped over our heads as a roof, nibbling at pieces of food. You've lived in the palace. You have no idea what you're talking about, I'm sure, was the internal conversation that they had. And then he says this, not only don't be afraid, but remember the Lord. I love that. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome. Now, why isn't that important? Why is that? Because he takes them back to the moments of divine victory. You see, the enemy wants to take you into moments of failure. God wants to take us to moments of victory. Remember the Lord, he says, great and awesome. Fight for your families, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. Now, I'm going to say something that's very politically incorrect, but I need you to hear it. I had a difficult relationship with my pops because he was an alcoholic. But there are some pieces that he gave me for which I am eternally grateful. And I remember at a particular stage, my grades were not sharp, and he called me aside, and he said, my boy, one day you will have a wife and you will have kids. And he said, in that day, you will be responsible to take care of your wife and your kids. You will be responsible to create the climate, the ecosystem, the vibe in the home. It's your responsibility, he said. Now you have to learn to fight for your wife. And it starts now. And you have to learn to fight for your sons and your daughters, and it starts now. And I want to say that to you, even if it doesn't sound cool or sound correct. I want to say to you, especially you young men, and again, forgive me, I'm a boomer and I'm a South African, I can get away with stuff. But I want to say to you, you guys have to learn to fight for your wife, to be your sons and your daughters, and you have to learn to take on the mantle of Nehemiah and be prepared to stand firm and stand strong, creating a climate of security and of strength and of stamina and of stability. I wonder, I'll close with this. We won't finish the chapter, there's too much. You know this story well. The enemy comes and threatens them again. And Nehemiah gets the men to, at times, work with a trowel and a sword. I mean, we're talking some hard work here, people. Oh, I'm so tired, I can't come to table community. I was at work for 5 hours. Really? Come on, people. We want to change the world. You want to leave a legacy. You want to impact life. Let's get a little gutsy here. Get a little eternity in our hearts. And then he says, you know what? You work during the day and you stand guard at night. Remember when you used to sleep? Well, no more. You're not sleeping anymore until this job's done. And I can only imagine at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, when you're on patrol, when you are on guard duty and you want to nod off. Those Mediterranean evenings can get really chilly. You want to nod off. Psst, hey, psst, wake up. I'm so tired, man. So tired. Lift your head. It's up to us. Remember, fight for your wives, your sons, your daughters. Fight for your family. Okay. I asked myself this week, what is human flourishing biblically? I think he describes human flourishing right there. It's not be happy. It's not get a bigger job and a bigger car. And those things are great. Meryl and I have got a great home in East Costa Mesa. And I drive a cool 4Runner. And she's got a little BMW i3. Neither of them were new when we bought them, but we love them. She zoots around. She's quite crazy, actually. It's around. Not against any of that. But there's another side to human flourishing. And the human flourishing that I want to land with tonight is that passage. Don't be afraid of them. If you think human flourishing is happiness, you will change your job often, you will change your friends often, you will change your church often. But when happiness is not human flourishing, then you begin to look for other things. He says, remember the Lord. That is human flourishing. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome. That is human flourishing. I'm flourishing in the very center of the will of God for my life. I got a message a few months back. A couple we met, Peter and Barbie Reynolds. They got married in Afghanistan as 20-something-year-olds. Spent most of their life ministering. Orphanages, started many schools around Afghanistan. And then when the Taliban took over, the message was out. We've got to capture them and imprison them. They are now in their 70s. Just before they went back the last time, we had a dinner with them, with their daughter and husband. And they say, our kids keep telling us, why don't you just retire? They're from England. Why don't you just retire in England? You get a great retirement complex, and they sit there honestly, tenderly in their 70s with health issues, tears streaming down their face. But when we are in Afghanistan, we are most fully alive. When the Taliban first started hunting them, there would be miraculous stories of them being woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning. You've got to go now. And they would, for some reason, take a right turn and end up bypassing a roadblock. Safety, safety, until they were arrested. And I got a message to say they have been taken captive in two of the most dastardly prisons, him in a men's prison, she is in a female prison, without their medication. Pray. To them, flourishing was dying in a nation that they loved so deeply. They have been released on a prisoner exchange through the British government. See, the kingdom flourishing is very different. It's great. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome. That's flourishing. When Meryl and I have had moments in our marriage that weren't good, and we looked at each other and we thought, why are we even married? Remember the Lord. Remember the Lord spoke to me when she was 15. Remember the Lord saying, when you are in your 80s, you'll walk hand in hand on the beachfront, speaking about the good things that God has done. Remember the Lord, because right now it doesn't look good. But remember the Lord. That, ladies and gentlemen, is flourishing. And then he goes on to say, fight for your families, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your children. That is flourishing. My sermon tonight has been peppered with family stories for which I do apologize. But we just went camping with the clan up in Santa Barbara these last 2 days. Remember the Lord and fight for your wife, your husband, your singleness, your brother, your sister, your parents, your friends. Fight for them. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to suggest that is a greater picture of human flourishing than the quest for happiness, the quest for materialism, the quest for more, the quest for a great work environment, the quest for that I can have a Sabbath every Saturday, the quest for whatever that is human flourishing. Life is born out of that sacred assignment. Will you join me around the table tonight? The enemy does love coming to intimidate us. The enemy loves coming to discourage us. The enemy loves coming to demean us. The enemy loves to divide people against us. The enemy loves to destroy any sense of self-worth we have and soak us with the imposter syndrome. He loves doing all of those things. But remember the Lord. Don't be afraid. And fight for your brothers and sisters. As we come to the table tonight, I'm always curious by these moments because I'm not much of a liturgy man. But if for some reason we're able to bring a camera and just run up and down the aisles with what every one of you is facing right now. And I think if the moment was real and true where you could shout from the inner part of your belly, I need you. I need you to fight for me. That couple who can't have a baby. I need you, says the man or the woman who can't get a job and whose resources are running low. I need you, says the single woman who's desperately wanting to be married and every door seems to shut as a cul-de-sac. True human flourishing is fighting for your brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers. What a gift, what a privilege.
Thank you for listening to the Genesis Costa Mesa podcast. To find more information about our community, feel free to visit our website, www.genesiscostamesa.com, or find us on social media at Genesis Costa Mesa.